The silent departure ambassador, Sarah Chen, stood in the observation deck of the Federation Council station, watching the stars through the massive viewport. The emergency session had ended 3 hours ago, but she remained frozen in place, processing what had just happened. The vote was final, 847 to 623. Humanity was being expelled from the Galactic Federation after only 37 years of membership. The Thrakari delegation had led the charge, their serpentine forms coiled in what Sarah had learned to recognize as smugness. Chancellor Vextel had delivered the final speech with cold precision. The human species has proven too unpredictable, too ambitious. They expand too quickly, innovate too rapidly, and show insufficient respect for established protocols. The Federation has maintained peace for 3,000 years. We cannot risk that stability for one young species. Sarah had requested permission to speak, but the vote was called before she could defend her people. Not that it would have mattered. The decision had been made in private chambers long before the public session. The established powers of the Federation had grown, uncomfortable with humanity's rapid integration into galactic society. Her personal communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Earth. The orders were simple and direct. Operation Quiet Dawn authorized. All personnel return to Sol System immediately. No exceptions. No delays. No explanations. Sarah smiled sadly. She had expected this response. Humanity had learned long ago that dignity was often more powerful than defiance. They would not beg, threaten, or bargain. They would simply leave. Dr. Marcus Torres received the same message while deep in the quantum communication array beneath Europa Station. For 15 years, he had worked on the network that connected every Federation world in real-time communication. The breakthrough had come from human innovation, combining quantum entanglement with fractal mathematics in ways that other species had never imagined. Marcus ran his fingers along the central processing unit he had designed. The technology was elegant, efficient, and completely dependent on human understanding of quantum mechanics. Other species had tried to replicate it, but they approached the problem with their own limited perspectives. The Zephyrians thought in linear sequences. The Aquarians processed information in fluid patterns. The crystalline collective used harmonic resonance. Only humans thought in the chaotic, intuitive leaps that quantum mechanics required. Only humans could make the technology work. Marcus began the shutdown sequence. Every piece of human design technology would be encrypted and locked before departure. The quantum communication network would continue running for perhaps 6 months before the maintenance protocols failed. After that, the Federation would return to the old system of message drones that took weeks to travel between stars. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UFS Determination, flagship of the Human Defense Fleet. Around her, tactical displays showed the positions of 300 human warships scattered across Federation space. They had been the quiet guardians of the Outer Rim for decades, protecting trade routes and colony worlds from the threats that lurked in deep space. Elena had fought beside Federation allies against the Void Swarm, the mechanical hunters that emerged from dark space every few decades. She had saved Thrakari colonies from pirate raids. She had negotiated peace between warring species. Her crews had died protecting Federation worlds. Now those same worlds were celebrating humanity's departure. Admiral, her communications officer, reported, "The Thrakari Third Fleet is requesting our patrol schedules and defense protocols." Alina almost laughed. The arrogance was breathtaking. They expelled humanity, but still expected to benefit from human military expertise. Inform the Throckery that our patrol schedules are classified human military information. They're welcome to establish their own patrols. She turned to her tactical officer. Signal all human ships. We're going home. Across the galaxy, the withdrawal began. Human colonies packed their belongings and boarded transport ships. Research stations uploaded their data to encrypted servers and shut down their experiments. Military outposts destroyed sensitive equipment and recalled their personnel. Merchant vessels finished their current contracts and declined to accept new ones. The Federation members watched in confusion. They had expected protests, legal challenges, maybe even military threats. Instead, they found empty facilities and polite farewell messages. Captain James Morrison commanded the merchant vessel New Horizons, one of the largest cargo haulers in Federation space. His ship alone carried enough trade goods to supply an entire star system for months. The human merchant fleet had revolutionized interstellar commerce, using innovative shipping techniques and fearless exploration to establish trade routes that others considered impossible. The dangerous passage through the Maelstrom Nebula had been a human discovery. The shortcuts through unstable wormholes had been mapped by human pilots. The trading posts in asteroid fields and around dangerous stars had been built by human engineers. Now those trade routes would fall silent. "Sir," his cargo master reported, "the Aquarian Trade Syndicate is offering us triple rates to continue our routes." James shook his head. "We have our orders. Complete current deliveries and return to Sol System. But sir, without our ships, some of these routes will become completely inaccessible. The Aquarians don't have the navigation skills for the nebula passages. The crystalline collective can't handle the high radiation zones." James looked at the star charts showing the vast network of human-maintained trade routes. Each line represented years of dangerous exploration, innovative engineering, and countless lives risked to bring prosperity to the galaxy. "That's not our problem anymore." On the research station orbiting Kepler 442, Dr. Elena Petrov made final adjustments to the terraforming equipment she had designed. The massive atmospheric processors could transform a dead world into a garden paradise in just 50 years. The technology had been humanity's gift to the Federation, freely shared with any species that wanted to expand their territory. 12 worlds were currently undergoing terraforming using human technology. Hundreds more were planned. The equipment was complex, requiring constant maintenance and occasional reprogramming to adapt to different planetary conditions. Only human engineers fully understood the systems. Alina initiated the lockdown protocols. The machines would continue operating for perhaps a year before requiring maintenance that only she could provide. After that, the terraforming projects would slowly fail, leaving 12 worlds trapped in various stages of incomplete transformation. She felt a pang of sadness for the colonists who would suffer, but the Federation had made its choice. They had decided that humanity was too dangerous to keep around. Now they would discover what the galaxy was like without human innovation. The communication arrays fell silent first. Within hours of the human departure, the quantum network began, experiencing cascading failures. Messages that should have taken seconds to transmit suddenly required days. Emergency communications between star systems became impossible. The Throckery Chancellor tried to contact the Aquarian homeworld about a brewing territorial dispute. The message took 4 days to arrive, and another 4 for the response. By the time communication was established, the dispute had erupted into armed conflict. the Zephyrian Science Council attempted to coordinate a joint research project with the Crystalline Collective. Without real-time communication, the project devolved into confusion and mutual accusations of sabotage. Trade routes that had operated with clockwork precision for decades began experiencing delays and disruptions. Without human navigators, cargo ships were forced to use longer, safer routes that avoided the dangerous but profitable shortcuts humans had pioneered. The Aquarian Trade Syndicate lost 3 heavy freighters in the Maelstrom Nebula when their navigators attempted to follow human route markers without understanding the complex gravitational mathematics required. The shortcuts that had made interstellar trade profitable suddenly became death traps. On the Federation Council station, emergency sessions were called daily to address the growing crisis. The same leaders who had voted to expel humanity now found themselves desperately trying to manage the chaos that followed. Asterisk. The communication network is operating at less than 30% capacity, reported the Zephyrian Science Minister. Our attempts to repair the quantum arrays have resulted in 3 complete system failures. Our defensive early warning systems are going offline across the outer rim, added the Aquarian military commander. We've lost contact with 16 monitoring stations. Chancellor Vextel coiled his serpentine form in agitation. These are temporary setbacks. We managed perfectly well before the humans arrived. But that was 3,000 years ago, protested the Crystalline Collective's representative. The galaxy has changed. We've become dependent on human innovations. Then we'll adapt, Vextel declared. We'll rebuild using our own technology. But even as he spoke, reports continued to arrive. The terraforming projects were failing. The trade routes were becoming impassable. The defensive networks were going dark. The Federation was discovering that humanity had been far more integral to galactic civilization than anyone had realized. Sarah Chun's final message to the Federation Council was brief and professional. The human delegation thanks the Galactic Federation for 37 years of cooperation. We wish you success in your future endeavors. This concludes our official communication. The message was sent on the last functioning quantum relay before the network collapsed entirely. After that, the Federation would have to rely on message drones that took weeks to travel between stars. As the last human transport ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Federation territory forever, the galaxy began to understand what it had lost. The quiet, efficient presence that had held their civilization together was gone. The species they had dismissed as too young and too dangerous had been the very foundation of their modern way of life. The Federation had achieved what they wanted. The unpredictable, ambitious humans were gone. The galaxy was safe from human disruption. Now they would discover whether safety was worth the price they had paid. Asterisk, the price of pride 6 months after humanity's departure. The Galactic Federation was falling apart. Chancellor Vextel slithered through the corridors of the Federation Council station, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. The emergency session had been called after the latest disaster report arrived via message drone, taking 3 weeks to travel from the Outer Rim territories. The Void Swarm had returned. The mechanical hunters from dark space emerged every few decades, drawn by the electromagnetic signatures of advanced civilizations. For the past 40 years, they had been held at bay by the early warning network and rapid response fleets that humans had established along the galactic rim. Now those defenses were gone, and the Federation was blind to the approaching threat. "How many systems have gone dark?" asked the Aquarian representative, her bioluminescent patches flickering with anxiety. 17 confirmed, reported the Zephyrian science minister. Possibly more. Without the quantum communication network, we're operating on information that's weeks old. Vextel struggled to maintain his composure. The Void Swarm had been humanity's first major contribution to Federation defense. When the mechanical hunters had last emerged, it was human tactical brilliance that had developed the strategies to defeat them. Human engineers had built the sensor networks that detected their approach. Human pilots had led the desperate battles that drove them back into dark space. Now the humans were gone, and the Void Swarm had returned to find the galaxy defenseless. What about our own fleets? Demanded the crystalline collective's harmonic voice. Surely we can mount a defense without human assistance. The Aquarian military commander's response was grim. Our fleets are scattered across the galaxy, mostly defending trade routes that are failing anyway. Without the quantum network, we can't coordinate a unified response. By the time we gather our forces, the Void Swarm will have consumed half the rim worlds. The irony was devastating. The Federation had expelled humanity partly due to concerns about human military capability. Now they desperately needed exactly that capability to survive. Dr. Zexandra of the Zephyrian Science Council had spent the last 6 months trying to understand human technology. Her team had taken apart every piece of human-designed equipment they could find, hoping to reverse the quantum communication system. The results had been catastrophic. We've lost another research station, she reported to the emergency council session. The quantum resonance cascade destroyed the entire facility. 12 of our best scientists were killed. The pattern was becoming clear. Human technology appeared simple on the surface, but it was built on principles that other species couldn't grasp. The Zephyrians approached problems with logical, sequential thinking. The Aquarians used fluid, adaptive reasoning. The crystalline collective processed information through harmonic resonance. Human technology required something else entirely: intuitive leaps, chaotic creativity, and the ability to see patterns in seemingly random data. No other species possessed these traits in the same combination. Perhaps we should consider alternative approaches, suggested the Thackeray trade minister. The humans used dangerous shortcuts through unstable space. We could establish safer, more conventional routes. At what cost? Countered the Aquarian representative. Conventional routes would triple shipping times and quadruple costs. Half our colonies would become economically unviable. The trade crisis was deepening daily. The Maelstrom Nebula Passage, which had been humanity's greatest navigation achievement, was now completely impassable. 3 major shipping companies had declared bankruptcy after losing their entire fleets. Attempting to follow human route markers without understanding the complex calculations required, the Kepler 442 terraforming project had become a symbol of the Federation's new reality. The atmospheric processes had been operating flawlessly for 8 years, slowly transforming the barren world into a paradise. The Aquarian colony ships had been scheduled to arrive in just 2 more years. Now the processes were failing. Without human maintenance, the delicate balance of atmospheric gases was destabilizing. The oxygen levels were dropping, while toxic compounds accumulated in the atmosphere. The world that should have become a garden was turning into a poisonous wasteland. We've tried everything, reported the project's Aquarian director via message drone. We've sent our best engineers, but they can't understand the human control systems. Every attempt to repair the processes has made the situation worse. Similar reports arrived from 11 other terraforming projects across the galaxy. Hundreds of billions of Federation citizens had invested their savings in colonial ventures that were now collapsing. The economic damage was staggering. Commander Vexall of the Thrakari Defense Force reviewed the tactical situation with growing despair. The Outer Rim monitoring stations had gone dark one by one as their human design systems failed. The Federation was now blind to threats from dark space, relying on outdated sensor networks that had been obsolete for decades. "The Void Swarm has reached the Centauri cluster," he reported. 3 star systems have been completely consumed. We estimate their main force will reach core Federation space within 6 months. The numbers were terrifying. The Void Swarm operated like a mechanical plague, consuming entire civilizations to fuel their own reproduction. They had been dormant for 40 years, building their strength in the dark spaces between galaxies. Now they had returned in greater numbers than ever before. "What about the defense platforms?" asked Chancellor Vextal. "The humans built automated defense systems throughout the Rim territories. 90% are offline," Dexel replied. "The platforms require constant updates to their targeting algorithms. Without human programmers, they can't adapt to the Void Swarm's tactics." The Federation's military leaders had made a devastating discovery. Human defense systems weren't just technologically advanced, they were tactically creative. The platforms used machine learning algorithms that could adapt to new threats in real time. Other species had built their own automated defenses, but they followed rigid, predictable patterns that the Void Swarm had already learned to counter. Only human-designed systems possessed the chaotic creativity needed to stay ahead of the mechanical hunters. Dr. Zenthara of the Crystalline Collective had dedicated her existence to understanding patterns in quantum mechanics. Her species processed information through harmonic resonance, creating beautiful, symmetrical equations that described the universe's fundamental forces. For 6 months, she had been trying to understand human quantum technology, their mathematics. "Our chaos," she reported to the Science Council. "There's no pattern, no harmony. They combine incompatible theories and somehow make them work." The revelation was shocking. Human quantum mechanics violated every principle of proper scientific methodology. They used intuitive leaps where logic should prevail. They combined theories that should have been mutually exclusive. They solved problems through chaotic experimentation rather than systematic analysis, and somehow it worked better than anything the Federation had ever developed. "We need to face facts," Zenthara continued. "Human technology isn't just different from ours. It's fundamentally incompatible with our ways of thinking. We may never be able to replicate it." The admission sent shockwaves through the Federation's scientific community. For 3,000 years, they had believed that all advanced civilizations would eventually develop similar technologies. The discovery that human innovation was truly unique challenged everything they thought they knew about. Scientific progress, the economic collapse accelerated as more sectors failed. The biotechnology industry, which had relied on human medical advances, found itself unable to treat diseases that human techniques had easily cured. The energy sector struggled to maintain the fusion reactors that human engineers had optimized. The transportation industry watched helplessly as their most profitable routes became impassable. The Federation's citizens began to understand what they had lost. The humans hadn't just been another member species, they had been the invisible foundation that supported their entire civilization. Their quiet competence had allowed other species to pursue their own specializations without worrying about the complex infrastructure that made it all possible. Now that infrastructure was crumbling, and no one knew how to fix it, as the crisis deepened, some Federation leaders began to reconsider their decision. The Aquarian representative was the first to speak openly about the mistake they had made. "We expelled humanity because we feared their unpredictability," she said during a closed council session. But that unpredictability was exactly what made them valuable. They could solve problems that we couldn't even recognize as problems. The Zephyrian science minister nodded reluctantly. "Our species excel at optimizing known solutions. Humans excelled at creating entirely new solutions. We assumed that made them dangerous, but it actually made them essential." Chancellor Vextel remained defiant. "We cannot admit error. The Federation has maintained its authority for 3,000 years. If we acknowledge that we need humanity, we undermine our own legitimacy." But the crisis was beyond political considerations. The Void Swarm continued its advance, consuming star systems faster than the Federation could respond. The communication networks remained crippled. The trade routes stayed closed. The terraforming projects continued to fail. Finally, the Crystalline Collective's representatives spoke the words that everyone was thinking: "We need to contact the humans." The silence that followed was deafening. The Federation had expelled humanity with great ceremony, declaring them too dangerous for galactic civilization. Now they needed to admit that they had been wrong. The species they had dismissed as too young and too ambitious was their only hope for survival. The message was sent via the most advanced, long-range transmission system the Federation possessed. It took 3 days to reach the Sol system, and another 3 days for a response. The human reply was brief and professional. "The United Earth Government acknowledges the Galactic Federation's communication regarding the current crisis. We are prepared to discuss the terms of our potential assistance. A diplomatic mission will be dispatched to Federation space within 30 days. The response was polite but cold. The humans weren't rushing to help the people who had expelled them. They were approaching the situation as a business negotiation, not a rescue mission. The Federation had learned a hard lesson about the price of pride. They had taken humanity's contributions for granted, assuming that other species could easily replace human innovation. Now they faced the collapse of their civilization and the very real possibility of extinction. The galaxy was about to discover whether humanity's mercy was as remarkable as their ingenuity. The species that had left without a fight was now holding the Federation's fate in their hands. The lesson was clear. Never take your most valuable allies for granted. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and sometimes the greatest threats came not from outside invaders, but from your own arrogance. Asterisk.